Hey guys, my name is Omar. Today I'm going to be introducing you to our new video series called Made to Drive. In this video series, we'll be reviewing members' cars of the BMW M and M-Performance Car Club group. If you want to get involved in these videos, just drop a comment below and we'll basically get back to you. For now, we're starting our videos in England and I'll be starting here with my BMW M5 F10, and then eventually we will expand this around the world. So if you want to get involved in these videos, just drop a comment as I mentioned and we'll get back to you. But for now, let's look at my BMW M5 F10. So before talking about my BMW M5, I guess I should have a little bit of a backstory about what got me into cars and what got me into BMWs. So it's quite a memorable story for me. At a young age, my dad bought a BMW M3 E30, which was the first car I came home in when I was born. My dad went and picked up his M3 and then took me home from the hospital. So talk about priorities. But from that car, essentially, that was kind of where my love for cars, the automobile, and high performance cars and BMWs kind of stemmed from. I mean, that car was finished in Cinnabar Red, it was Hartgood tuned, it had a supercharger on it, it would rev to like 12.5k, also on square setup wheels, and that kind of car was very memorable to me. And then, I mean, a lot of people still look up to the E30 as a car with a lot of soul and good driving characteristics, which for me is very key in when I'm looking for a car. So this here behind me, as I mentioned, is my BMW M5 F10. It replaced my BMW M3 E92 Coupe, which I had beforehand. And I have quite a few cars in my collection. I still have another M3, Audi RS5s, Golf R32, Audi S4 B5 Advance, even other things like Audi R8s, Bentleys, that sort of thing. So I've been around quite a lot of high performance cars, and for me, the core thing is always having that soul and driving characteristics that the E30 had. So when I look at a car, essentially, that's kind of the top thing on my list, and this car was basically the best thing I could get, which is a new car and a lot of driving similarities from like the E30 and my E92. So as I said, this replaced my BMW E92 in May, and it's a really good car. And for me, the BMW M5 has always been that pinnacle halo BMW M product. It's always the best of the best that BMW can do. It's always the latest technology, and I guess with the M cars, I mean the M5, it started to get recognized around like the BMW E39 M5. Back then, I mean, the ethos of an M5, and it's always been there since the beginning, is to basically have a four-door supercar, but also a car that drives like an M3. I mean, the M3 is crowned as such a good driver's car, but also you have the specs that basically match up with like the outgoing Ferraris at that time. So when you look at the BMW E39, which came out in the early 2000s, you had a 5-litre V8 pushing about 400 brake horse, 6-speed manual, but the specs of that car, I'd say very similar to like the Ferrari 355, the outgoing Ferrari at that time. So you had 0 to 60 in about 4.8 seconds, top speed close to 190 mile an hour. Basically, it was like a four-door Ferrari, and that's kind of where the M5 has always been known as. That it's been classed as the four-door supercar, and technology with them cars are always ahead of everything, I noticed as well. I mean, you look at the next generation, the BMW M5 E60 V10. Again, first you have a motorsport derived V10 5-litre, 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, and a top speed up to like 200 mile an hour, which at that time, I guess the Ferrari F430 was kind of a similar sort of thing. Again, you had a 7-speed gearbox in that, which no one really had, head-up display, all that other kind of technologies, soft closing doors, integrated iDrive systems, and all of them, that technology that car had, I'd say would still be current today, which is what I like about the M5 and M3s and all the M cars really, is that they have a lot of technology put into them, not only mechanical, but also the technology in the car, which kind of makes them not date too badly. So it's easily a car you could basically have for life, and for me that's kind of what I want to have, although I've never kept a car longer than a year, but I really want to. So for me was the BMW M5 F10, which is the next generation from the E60 M5 V10. With this car, you've got a 4.4 litre V8 inside with about 600 brake horse, most of them dynoed a little bit more than that. And with that engine, you've got a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which is really fast and snappy. And that was one of the things I love from my M3, and I never wanted to change that really. I really love DCTs. I find them very engaging and very fast, and I prefer them over a manual. I think for me, they're 50% of the character of the car. I mean, you get that chassis twist and that engagement with the engine. I feel like it's a very involving driving feel, and you don't get that from many cars. Like I said though, back to the engine, you've got 4.4 litre V8, 600 brake horse, 0 to 60 in the low 4 seconds and a top speed of 190 mile an hour, which is pretty much similar to, I'd say, like the Audi R8s or the Ferrari 458 Italia. I mean, it's up there essentially. The engine in the car is still pretty current. I mean, they're still using that in the latest generation, the F90, so you do feel like you have an updated car. So that's kind of where the M5s are and how I view the M5s, and for me the F10 stuck out really a lot. Like I said, with the car you've got that specification like a Ferrari, you've got the same power figures, that sort of thing, but also you're doing that in a four-door car. And the other bits as well that I like about the M5 F10 is not only the engine, I like the way the exhaust sounds. It sounds very tuned, very muscular, very angry. I wouldn't say it feels fake or piped in like a lot of journalists said when this car first came out. I think it's very engaging and very intoxicating to drive, the engine. And just being behind that car, it really handles and feels like a BMW M3. It doesn't feel like a big family 5 Series, which is essentially what it is. Although it is a big car, you have a lot of technology inside of it as well. So you've got like 360 cam, keyless go, head-up display, digital dash, massive iDrive. So all of them things really help with daily in the car. And with like MPG figures and that sort of thing, it's like 2 more MPG better than my M3. So in my eyes, that's also a win. So that's kind of like what I feel about my BMW M5. The way it drives and handles, I mean, you've got a lot of low end torque, a lot of push, and that's kind of what the M3 was lacking. I know the M3 is a good handling car and that's what it's for, but for me, I like daily use as well. I don't want to just have an amazing chassis but not being able to drive it hard or fast. Not that I do that anyways. I tend to just drive it very relaxed as a comfortable cruiser. And you can do that in the M5 F10. I mean, you've got essentially three M modes. You've got 2 buttons on the steering wheel, M1 and M2, which you can map to whatever you want. So for me, I have my M1 just all in sport with traction on, and then my M2 is everything in sport plus with traction on too, and puts that in manual. And then you have your 3rd M mode, which is just linked to your key when you turn on the car. So for me, when I turn on the car, it's always in efficiency because I'm just day-to-day driving. But when I want to have a little bit of fun on a B road or when it's quiet, just put it in M2, drive it on manual, sport plus, and that's pretty much it. With the M5 though, you can't really use it in England for what it is. I mean, a lot of M5 F10 and F90 owners would know this. You probably use about half a throttle max in England because you're pretty much at illegal speeds. So that's kind of BMW M5 F10 and why it's appealed to me, how cars have appealed to me, and why I feel coming from that E30 M3 and that F10 M5, it hasn't lost anything. And you can trace that back through the E39, the E60, the F10. I feel with the F90, it's not really much of an upgrade, and I feel like the soul and characteristics have been lost. And I felt like the F10 is still has that BMW, which is across most BMWs, and again they're losing it now, but it was always a car that ages really well, and you can tell that when you look at the E92. When you look at all the other E series, like the 5 Series, the E60, the E92, the E46, look at the F10, and you know it's just a car that would not age and date that very well. So that's basically essentially what I look for in a car, why cars are important to me, why the F10 is important to me. And if you're interested in the cars that I have in my collection, I mean, I have quite a lot of different varied things. My Instagram is below and also on the screen here. And make sure you follow the BMW M and M-Performance Car Club Facebook page. If you enjoyed this video and learned a little bit more about myself and a little bit about my cars and me and the BMW M5, please do get involved, and we can basically make this work for any of the members on the group, and we'll learn a bit more about yourself and your car. So take care guys, make sure you subscribe, look at the Facebook page, and give us a follow on Instagram. Take care.